Welcome to another Business Spotlight. My name is Kerry James. I'm a business coach and a facilitator. And on the Business Spotlight, we share pearls of wisdom, reflections, lessons, and tips from local business owners. And this afternoon on Business Spotlight, we have a CEO of Organisational and People Genetics, Tracy Boylin. Good afternoon to you, Tracy, and great to have you on Business Spotlight.
Good afternoon, Kerry, and thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, there's a little bit of a suggestion in the title, of course, of your business, but tell us a little bit more about the history of Organisational and People Genetics and what do you specialise in, please?
Okay, so I started off my life, first of all, as a researcher and then went into HR, actually human resources. But it was personnel when I started out. And when it moved to human resources, I hated the title. For me, a resource is a laptop, a piece of equipment. It's not people. And I think that symbolises some of the issues we've got now in different organisations. So when I started my own company, for me, HR should be about the conscience of the organisation, being the conscience of the organisation and the people within it, and making sure the values and the DNA of that organisation match the DNA of the people you have. So hence organisational and people and genetics about your DNA.
And so how long have you been in operation now then, Tracy? And what is the sort of size and shape of the team you've got?
So probably now about a good 6 years. I sort of was a sole trader pre that, doing little bits, but the business really began to form about 6 years ago. We're still a small team of 3 people, but on bigger projects we do work with associates because we do get asked to do bigger projects as well. So yeah, that's sort of the makeup of the company at the moment.
So you mentioned the projects. What might be a typical project and what might be the size and shape of an ideal client for you then, Tracy?
So it can range from individuals who want to work with us, and small SMEs who want some HR support, but HR support done in the right way. So not just an off-the-shelf policy that is legally compliant. We specialise in making sure the policies match the values that you have on the wall, and start from scratch. But then we can do much bigger. We've just done a big 3-year project up in Scotland with the Scottish Government, and that followed after there'd been an inquiry into a particular big health board up there, and that was initially for 6 months, but like I say, it sort of merged into being a 3-year project. It was called the healing process. And after things had gone horribly wrong and there'd been a very damning inquiry and report into how the trust had behaved, we worked with putting things right in that organisation with the U board that got appointed. And that was huge. Like I say, it spanned 3 years, which looked at restoration for people, how we got that culture right for the organisation through any learning that was coming out of what we were picking up. So yeah, it can really vary. There's no sort of ideal size really. We're willing to take on the big projects.
Very good. So we're living in quite interesting times. It's one way of putting it, maybe quite a British way of putting it. With lockdown 3 years or so ago, inflation, interest rates, the impact of lockdown on the labour market and hybrid working, etc. How have those trends and dynamics impacted on your industry and your business, would you say, Tracy?
I think it had a positive impact on our business. We were travelling a lot beforehand, and that could take up, one of the biggest challenges we have in the business is time. And managing all the demands that we have to deal with. But the fact that organisations suddenly couldn't have you on site, but still needed to function, The move to remote working was fantastic because suddenly you have more hours in the day where you were up and down the motorway. So that was one of the biggest positive impacts it had. The second biggest positive impact is I was getting a bit frustrated where we were constantly going into organisations where there'd been scandals to put things right. And for me, that learning, it was like it was Groundhog Day. The same things kept being repeated. And don't get me wrong, there's still a bit of that carry now, but because we got a bit more time, it led us to move into the tech side and we developed some tech. And we wouldn't have been able to do that pre-COVID. We just wouldn't have had that time and capacity. So now we're looking to pilot that tech. And what that does, it's more aimed at bigger organisations, but it's to give you that information and intelligence about what your people think it's really like to work for your organisation. The things they might not tell you as a chief exec face to face, they might be a little bit afraid to tell you. But that can allow for early intervention into preventing some of these things. And what we do, we these are not people issues. We translate them into the organisation's risk register. So they tackle them as a risk rather than pitting people against each other that can cause more dysfunction in an organisation, such as saying if they've got a big bullying problem, well, that's a bullying and harassment. You need to sort of go down this route and someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. And sometimes it's about much more than that. So we sort of translate it into the risks where they really then have intelligence to tackle the behaviours in their organisation, how people are responding, systems that might be complicating some of that and cause different responses as a result, for example.
Okay. And what about the challenges that you face as a business today? What might be kind of top of your list there?
I think it's fear. Do you know what it is? Fear, because some of the things we do and uncover, people get really nervous about, and they'd really rather them be kept under the carpet in most cases. I remember presenting to a big room full of HR directors and chief execs about what we did and how we would be able to uncover some of the problems that might be in that organisation that staff might not be sharing, that end up too late and end up on the front page of the Guardian or whatever. And I remember the silence after I'd finished sharing how we did that. And I just said, why, come on, give me some feedback, give me some what, do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you? And I just picked on this one guy at the front and said, tell me what you think. And he went, I wouldn't buy this. And I said, and he literally was like that. And I said, why? And he said, it would open a whole can of worms. And I said, well, then don't you know that can of worms is there? Shouldn't we be uncovering this can of worms to be proactive about tackling that? So it's that fear and getting people on board that enable to see the benefits going forward.
It's that kind of worms turning into an elephant in the room is the
well, exactly.
the
That's what
risk.
it does. Yeah. So it's better. When I was a HR director, I wanted to know. I wanted people to tell me. So I were forewarned is forearmed, as they say, don't they? And you can do something about it rather than it catch you. And it's an issue. So I think fear is one. And obviously finance, because particularly we do a lot of work in the public sector and finances are tight there. So
how do you best overcome those fears?
I think it's about education. Some of the pilots that we're doing, we're going to do case studies on to show the benefits about if you tackle this internally, this is what the transformation up in Scotland has been huge. The trust that got built back so quickly, because not only were we looking forward, but we were using the past to propel the action going forward. And by addressing some of that past, it was giving the staff and the people in that organisation confidence to move forward and trust that the U board would tackle some of these issues and meant what it said. So that's one way. We have to have those difficult conversations that people don't like having. And we have to, the finance is a real challenge. Sometimes it's not there. So we work across both the public and private sector to manage some of that. And we work at a national level as well with some of the regulators to see what they can do to help organisations that they're responsible for regulating, to see if we can get some joined up synergy by working across the patch, basically, in areas.
Okay, and what about your organisation then, Tracy? What aspirations do you have for Organisational and People Genetics over the next 3 to 5 years, say?
I think for me, the challenge is we grow, and if we roll the tech out, we will have to grow significantly. So we're looking at what that might look like. And as a small team, it's quite easy to ensure the integrity and ethics in all that we do. We're constantly talking to each other, but as we grow, that's going to get harder. So it is about, constantly reminding people what we're about. If we don't walk our walk, I don't think you can go out to organisations and tell them what they need to do if we don't do it. So we've got to be really transparent in everything that we do. One way I do that is when we do investigations, is ensuring that all parties who are part of that investigation input to the terms of reference. And that, believe it or not, Kerry, is still unusual these days. You get people who say, no, the board will tell you what your terms of reference are. Well, if it's only looking at one side, it's never going to uncover the whole picture, and that's not going to be helpful to the board in the longer run. You're going to get the other parties and the other stakeholders involved feeling that's not fair. So we will not take on an investigation if people don't sign up to that. As an organisation, we walk away from that organisation because it's not going to help them. And we also insist that reports are released, because they also say, oh, we can't release this report or whatever. It's got to be shared and got to be out there. So there's no sort of accusations of cover-ups, etc. We don't want to be part of that. We don't want to be part of that culture. So as we grow, my worry is really maintaining that with any staff that I bring on board, and making sure they work to those same values and ethics, really.
Okay, and what sort of values are top of your list in your organisation then?
So it is transparency, having those organisations valuing each other, checking in with ech other before we start anything. How are you? How was your weekend? We saw such and such on the news. How did that affect you? Because that can affect people. So it's just that check-in that we're all okay and we're all ready to go out and do business. And if not, that we can pick that up. That we all understand what we're about. I might be the CEO, but as a CEO, I'm still willing to do exactly what any of my team do. It's not just because I'm the CEO, I have these privileges. What I have, the team have. And that's how we operate, really. And I'm very, very lucky with the people I've got, Kerry.
And what about, you mentioned you work with SMEs earlier as well. Based on what you've learned as a business owner and a CEO, what would be your top lessons or top piece of advice to somebody starting a business today?
Do it right from the start. Don't cut corners. Don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Go out and ask. People are always willing to share. So you won't know everything. You can't be expected to know everything. We don't know as human beings. So go out and ask. No, you can't do it all, because when I started and it was just me, you're trying to juggle. And I think you've got to understand at what point does it need to start bringing another person on board. How do you do that? And make sure at each stage, before you go to that next level, the infrastructure's there to support it, because it can start toppling if you've sort of got to that stage before you've got those foundations there. So that's what's worked for me, really.
Sounds like wise counsel. It's very believing that we know it all is a very dangerous place to be.
It is, yeah. We do not. We certainly do not.
Okay, well, it's been fascinating hearing about your journey, Tracy. Just one final question then. If anybody's interested in picking up a conversation with you, what might you suggest as a sensible next step?
Just have a chat. Come and have a chat and a coffee. We do a 1 hour introductory chat about anything. We know if we feel we can't help you, we're dead honest about that, because again, we want to maintain our reputation. If we feel we're not for you, we'll tell you. So there's nothing lost by having that coffee. What you've done is met another person that you might not be able to reach out to. People is what I love and do. So I'm always meeting people, and I think you can gain something from every conversation you have. So let's start having those conversations.
Absolutely. Well, I've certainly enjoyed this conversation, Tracy. Thank you ever so much for your time and your input and your thoughts, and all the very best with the Organisational and People Genetics organisation.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Kerry. Lovely to meet you.
All right. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.